So as we look at the hidden ways we hold ourselves back, I want to first go to a survey that we posted on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, we have the next slide, please. We can get there. There it is. So we did a survey. These are the survey results that we did. And it was a very simple question. And it says, which of these do you know best about yourself and can easily describe to others? So there was 3 options for the participant of the survey to take. So the question again, which of these do you know best about yourself and can easily describe to others? So the first is my skills. When we talk about skills, we are thinking of the things that we've learned along the way. So these are things like maybe certifications, courses that we took, skills that we picked up in a role. So these are things that like incrementally we added value to ourselves by adding these to our portfolio. The second is, the second option was my strengths. So when we think of strengths, these are like things that we're already born with. Like maybe if you've taken the Strengths Finder and you try to leverage those things that you're already good at. And the last is the passions. So what are the passions? What are the things that you love doing? And so as if for those who can see, what evenly 41% said that they could most easily describe about themselves is their strengths and their passions. But what they said they were least comfortable talking about is their skills. So these things that we might bring up in a job interview, or skills that we have taken over time. Maybe we learned at conferences. Maybe it's something that we had like a logistics software or something, anything like that. So then we did a survey because that was so surprising, wasn't it, Janet, that women, I thought, couldn't describe their skills as easily. So what we then did is we actually posted this survey here in the Sisterhood. In the LinkedIn, we got 46 responses. And here in the Sisterhood, I forget how many we got. I think we got
I think there 40. Was around what there's
36.
Looks like there's 30.
Yeah, 36 actually. So it was the same exact survey, the same exact questions. Which of these do you know best about yourself and can easily describe to others? 50% said their passions, 47% said their strengths, and 3%, one person said that they could describe their skills the easiest. So this was even more interesting to us that, again, we have a hard time talking about our skills. And so what I would like to do is reflect on some of the comments that I thought were super interesting that were posted on LinkedIn, because on the second slide there, I actually shared with you the post that I was like, does this surprise anybody else? So Mia, let's go to the comments and I'm going to read them and then we'll talk about kind of what I think is most interesting of these. So the first one is from Amanda, so from a female, and she said, this seems like a reflection of an issue that permeates societal structure overall. Many women are very hard on themselves and in turn, perhaps tend to undervalue their skill sets. She put in parentheses, which can have a ripple effect of leading to lesser pay, lower rank, etc. in the workplace. Many times we have skills that naturally occur and are enhanced through learning over time. So we do not consider them to be exceptional enough to be of note, yet they are. This comes out in our passions, which are easier to describe because, well, we are passionate about them. So end quote. So what I think is so fascinating about this, and I have to agree, and I think maybe even by our survey results reveal this, is that this notion that we're hard on ourselves is part of kind of the social structure. And we undervalue our skill sets. We don't want to brag, we don't want to boast or look like we're overconfident. And that's a whole nother discussion, isn't it, Janet, about being overconfident. Sometimes we're perceived as what?
It starts with a B.
The B word. So let's look at the next comment that we received. And this one I thought, these are actually from two men who commented on it. The first, a gentleman named Jay, he said, "This is sad and sobering, especially that I'm a father of daughters." Thanks for calling this out. So what's interesting about Jay's comment as being a father of daughters, and that's end quote, and also Amanda in the earlier quote, she had the next day posted that she used this as a discussion in her home with her own kids. So it is something as we think about raising daughters and sons, and even nieces and nephew and young females who we can help to reinforce and make them feel comfortable with their talking about their skill sets. And then one that we actually put in the Better Letter, our newsletter, is from Tony, a male. He said, "Having managed both men and women over a long career, this doesn't surprise me. In my own experience, a larger percent of women versus men will tend to either underestimate their skills, undervalue them, and or how they think others perceive them to marginalize their confidence level." And when we saw that from Tony, that was, I don't know, that was like a little bit of I think it was a reality check, kind of a gut, like a gut punch a little bit, that women tend to either underestimate their skills, undervalue them, and or how they think others perceive them to marginalize their confidence level. So, and that's end quote. So as we think about things that hold us back, I think this is one clear indication that we have an opportunity to talk about skills and do it in a way that doesn't necessarily sound boastful, but it can maybe think of ways to connect it to part of a conversation to bring it out. So let's look at the last comments. Anything on that, Janet? Those comments from Jay and Tony from the men who responded?
I have to say that when we first saw those, it kind of was like a gut punch, like, ouch, somebody just ripped off the Band-Aid, But it's so true. Even Barbara, when you and I work together, you're like, Janet, I have this credential for sustainability accounting, and I always just think of it as this underlying thing. And you're like, no, there aren't many people that have it. You need to be talking about it more. And it's just, I don't know. It's like we have to unlearn underestimating ourselves and learn how to like re-estimate, and you know what I mean? Like talk about ourselves a little bit more. Anyway.
Yeah, I would agree. So, and on the last slide here, and these are the last two quotes, Holly said, "Unfortunately, women somehow along the way have learned to be very humble about their capabilities. I think it makes them uncomfortable to talk about what they're good at. Self-doubt is trained into us from an early age from all directions. So I'm actually not surprised by this, although the roots of it are pretty discouraging." And that's an end quote. So Holly is saying, this is something that we kind of grew up with, that we're used to not being confident. And one thing that I participated at American Airlines for several years when it very first started was Take Our Daughters to Work Day. And the whole design of that was to overcome this, is to get young females comfortable around being around other people and being proud of who they are, because there's a lot of studies that show young females, when they're around young males, they like take a back seat. That's like a instant thing that they feel like they can't really speak up. And so the boys in the room, they don't have any trouble with confidence. they're gonna take the floor. They're gonna make their comments known. And we're taught to kind of be proper and to speak when it's our turn. And so, and that's all good. It's not a bad thing, but in a business environment, it can hold us back. And then the last one, and I would like to hear from Janet, her summary on this too, is Yvette. And she said, "I do actually find this surprising. While our strengths and passions, our soft skills, make us who we are and are extremely valuable, we need to be able to boldly communicate our hard skills. We need them both." And that's an end quote. And Yvette, like gives me chills. I think it's so true. We need to be able to boldly communicate our hard skills. And even if you think about maybe being at like a cocktail party or a neighborhood social or something like that, if we ever have those again, I wouldn't think twice about a male kind of being braggadocious about what he knows. And I'm not in any way male bashing. I think it's just how we're wired and how we're raised. I don't know, Janet, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I was raised with 2 brothers, and I was the 3rd child. So there's the whole birth order thing. But I totally agree. I think that they actually communicated better with my dad because of that reason. And they were able to talk about, you know, those things that they were building, that they could actually, like, those skills that they had, right, that they were going to go and do. And I don't know, it's I got to tell you, this overall, this poll surprised me, because I think that those skills, and Lydia and I were just talking about this in the comments, that one of Lydia's points was that depending on what age you are, sometimes you talk about, maybe, I think she had said that she talked about more of her skills when she was younger, and then kind of ribboned it in with passions and strengths. But I think those skills are like that secret sauce and the glue that like holds it all together. And it's not a separate thing from strengths and passions, but I think you'll find that the skills that you develop over the years are the things that bring that all together. And I think one of the things that we don't do is go back into inventory, actually, like what they are. When you really sit down and think about the skills, and Barbara, you and me and I have talked about this at length over the last couple of weeks, the skills that we've developed just since we started working together, it's incredible. And when you start listing them, you're like, oh my God, I do that, and I do that, I do that. You know, it's really interesting to take a look at it. So anyway, I don't know if that was a point being made, but I think that my point is this, that if you don't do a skills inventory, I think that you're going to hold yourself back by seeing that the strengths and passions that you have are buoyed by those skills, and that it is that secret sauce and the glue that holds everything together.
Yeah, so I thought Yvette made a really good point, that we need to talk about both and not to be shy. And I think some of that too is practice, right? Like, we have to document what our skills are and be comfortable talking about it. And even like for job interviews, or when we've had big presentations before clients and everything, I always find that if I say them out loud, like if you can read your notes and you can mentally think about it and you need to do all of those things. But if you actually give the presentation out loud or rehearse what your skills are and why, then you kind of catch yourself and you're like, oh, maybe if I said it a little bit this way, or this would lead into that, when you actually say it out loud. I don't do it in front of a mirror. I did that and it was too distracting. Kind of like this, like looking at myself here. I really can't look at myself. So I would encourage women to take an inventory of their strengths and skills and passions, and in particular skills, so that we are prepared. And there's a whole notion, there's an old saying, I should say, that your next boss. And so if you think about, while you're socially interacting and you're making an impression on people, whether they're friends or family, if you can weave those things in, a lot of times, I know personally, I'm like, oh, I don't want to brag, I've got a company and we're working with these huge companies, like in the Fortune 10 and doing these things. But to me, that's like bragging. But then like my family's been, what do you do? How do you spend your day? So I think we do have to kind of fill in that gap. So I'll leave it at that. And I know, Janet, you have some other ways that we hold ourselves, secret ways we hold ourselves back, that you wanted to share. And we would love to get your thoughts on these as we go through these next topics that Janet so brilliantly put together.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. And I know that we talked a little bit about it last week. It came out in our newsletter. If you guys get our newsletter, if you don't, Mia's going to post in the comments. For those who don't have her signed up or subscribed to our newsletter yet, Mia will put a link in there so that you can get subscribed. But part of what we talked about last week in the newsletter, and it's kind of been like our theme for the week, based on the results from this poll that we really were really surprised about, was that really sitting down and taking a few minutes to think about ways that you do hold yourself back. Like when Barbara was just saying, we go to a meeting and we, as women, maybe we're problem solvers and we talk about solutions, but we really don't talk about why we are the people that should be providing the solution to that client, because we have these skills and we know what we're doing. So it's almost like there are just a few little ways that maybe we hold ourselves back and we don't even look at. And I think it's worth, I'm a big data person, and I think you can't argue with data, especially if you write it down in that nifty little journal of yours. But when I started thinking about the hidden ways that we hold ourselves back this weekend, one of the first things that I thought about was saying yes when I really want to say no, and giving people other time when what I should really be doing is not doing that. And I should be over here, doing something that aligns more with what I want to do, or a better way to spend my time, or something like that. So even something as simple as that. And that goes back to just having really good boundaries and knowing like who you are and what you want. And so that was one of my aha moments this weekend. And then also negative self-talk. Always comes back. I know. We all do it.
Guilty. We try to keep each other honest, don't we? But it does slip out. It's like 50 years of it being inside of me.
Negative self-talk. And it's so easy to turn it around. It's so easy to turn around. But even if you are a journaler or not a journaler, if you just carried a piece of paper with you for a few days, and every time you said something to yourself that you would never say to another person, like you would never say, you suck, but we say it to ourselves all the time. It's ridiculous. So write it down and start taking a look at what that looks like, and then turn it around and start catching yourself and not doing that. I think, and you guys, please post if you have some ways that you've hidden ways that you think that you hold yourself back. Put them in the comments, because it's like you can't manage what you don't measure. So if you recognize it and say it, maybe we'll have to hold you accountable for it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, another one for me is not listening to your intuition. And our intuition, when you think about when people go, oh, I just got goosebumps, or I got a pit in my stomach about that, or I don't know, you just have some like super duper reaction that's really happy, or you have this visceral reaction like, oh gosh, no. Not listening to your intuition, especially when we may be thinking, if I had told them XYZ about me, maybe I would have gotten that new contract, or maybe I would have done better in that interview, or I don't know, who knows, whatever the opportunity was. But sometimes we just, we don't listen to our better self. We're so focused on our negative self-talk that little intuition that's like, hey, knocking on the door, it's me, the good person inside here, telling you that this is good or bad for you, or that, maybe you should rephrase that next time, or the next time you're in that situation, make sure that you do talk about yourself in a good, positive way. So those are some of the things that I was just kind of reflecting on this weekend. And Barbara, I don't know about you, but those are some of the things that I came up with.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear from others if some come to mind. Maybe they prompt some ideas. One thing, that whole women's intuition thing, to me, that's like a tangible thing. I think that's a real differentiator for men and women. And, having been in relationships and work relationships, personal relationships with men, they just don't have that. And we have that kind of thing in our gut that says something doesn't feel right, or this feels right, or whatever. And I don't know if it's connected to faith or what it might be, but that is such an interesting thing to me, the whole women's intuition. And another thing that came up talking with some women actually in preparing for this panel that we're all on next week, and I thought it was so true, is when we think of us as women, we're such good multitaskers. It's just, for the most part, we're just wired that way. And if you think about being a candidate or taking on a new role, and some of the benefits that you provide as an individual, is that multitasking, and especially in times of crisis, you know, and not being singularly focused. I even think about like Christmas time, you know, doing like cooking and getting ready for company and shopping and all of that, you know, for the kids, you know, and sometimes men just like will be focused on one thing, one gift, one special gift, you know, and you're like going, you know, round and round and round and round. And then the last thing that I don't know if it holds us back, but as a differentiator, somebody else said, you know, it's like proven the way that we're wired, that we are just natural problem solvers, in that like we just, this like notion of thinking about things, and that's why we've talked about writing it down, and we just naturally try to help others and to problem solve and be inclusive. And that's what's so great about when we've had small groups of women come together, that is the case. Whereas you technically can ask a man, what are you thinking? And they'll say nothing. And that they're being honest. They aren't really thinking anything. And I don't know if I could ever say that I'm like not really thinking of anything. And so it's interesting as we think about like things that we can bring up about ourselves, and not that that's because we're female, but like if we're talking to somebody about our value, you know, I'm great at multitasking. I take others into consideration, you know, I'm a natural problem solver, you know, you could just list them like that fast. So anyway, so I hope that's helpful. Hidden ways that we hold ourselves back. That was a great topic that you brought up.